Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Faria. Joining me now on the program is Dr. Brathwaite. He's a senior member of the New National Party in Grenada, and he's joining me to speak about the state of the New National Party right now. The party has not been able to hold a convention for the last 2 years, just over 2 years, and that is stirring up a lot of conversation surrounding the leadership future of the New National Party. He's joining me to take a look at what's going on in the NNP, a diagnosis of the situation, if you will. Welcome to the program, Dr. Brathwaite.
Thank you, Calista. Thanks for having me. And good day to your viewers.
Well, you have been with the party since the 90s. When we say senior member, you really are one of the most senior under the Dr. Keith Mitchell dispensation of the New National Party. Through a lot of ups and downs, 7 general elections, 3 clean sweeps of the poll, the resignation of Dr. Raphael Fletcher, which triggered a general election in 1999, and more than 24 conventions, I think, by my count. How do you feel about the current state of the party?
Well, I think NNP is alive, and it's simply going through a transitional phase at present. You know, every party at some time in its lifespan will go through these phases. We have had a great run with our present political leader, and you know, he was prime minister some over 20 years, and a good stewardship of the country, but like everything else, there's a phase for everything in life, basically, and that's where we are presently.
And that's where you are. But there's a lot of discussion about. I mean, you part of the organs of the party. You've been embedded, and that you do know that you haven't what your constitution says regarding having a convention. The word "shall" is used in the wording of the convention as well. How do you feel about the current situation? How do you feel about the current situation with a delayed convention and so?
Well, perhaps before I comment on that, I should say that anything I mentioned to you here or discussed with you represents my personal view. I'm not speaking on behalf of the party because I'm not a formal member of the executive. I've been often invited to sit with the executive members, but I'm not a formal member, so I'm speaking just on behalf of myself. Yes, indeed, and in fact, I have advocated strongly since the last general election in June 2022 that we need to have an open process leading to election. And I look at other countries. I look at, for argument's sake, Britain. We saw over the last 2 years or so the number of occasions that the Conservative Party had to have elections, and I think there were 3 prime ministers over a short period of time. And they had a process by which they started out at one stage with 15 or so members of the party contesting for leadership, and it was whittled down to 8, and then it was whittled down to 3, and then ultimately they selected a leader. Now, we're not going to have those type of numbers here, but we have a number of people who are quite capable of leading the party, and you know, one member has come forward. Another member has indicated will come forward if there's a vacancy. Well, that's a story I would comment on as well, because I don't think there needs to be a vacancy. I think the process needs to be an open and transparent process to allow any member who so thinks that they have the well-being to be able to come forward. And what ideally, in an ideal world, what I would love to see is for the potential, all those who are potentially who see themselves as potential leaders, to come forward, and then we go from constituency to constituency. They broadcast and showcase their thinking about the party, what needs to happen within the party, what they would do if they were in government, looking at the challenges the country face, how they will handle it, and you have great debate and discussion. That's the ideal that NNP should be heading towards, in my opinion, at this time, to strengthen its legacy here in the country, basically.
But that, based on everything, Dr. Mitchell, he's been the leader of the party for a very long time. But everything that he has said overtly and covertly in the last year and a half since the party's defeat at the polls, uh, it seems to indicate that he does not intend to naturally open the field for others to offer themselves for leadership of the party, that he intends to remain there, and even if there is a convention, not be challenged. How do you get around
Well,
that when you have a leader who is so much synonymous with the NNP? We talk about so Eric and the GOLP and compare the situation with the NNP with that he is the party and the party is him. Some even saying the NNP will not survive. The NNP will go down with Dr. Mitchell. You hear people saying that. How do you get around that? And because you seem to be saying that it is time to seek new blood, even at the highest level of the party. But the old guard is not letting go, and in fact is tightening its grip, which is something I want to talk about later on with you, about his leads and deputy leads that he's recycling from the good old days of the NNP. How do you get around that? How do you get around him deciding he's not going? He's not going to open up the party for democratic transitions.
well, the party has a constitution. The constitution clearly says
But the
that,
party has
you know,
not had Dr. Brathwaite. The party has a constitution, but you haven't had a convention in what, 2 years, going on 3 years. Not sure if my count
yes,
is right, but you
in two
certainly have
plus
not.
years,
But you're
yeah.
certainly in
And
breach of your constitution now when it comes to
constitution,
calling a convention. Go ahead, please.
and I would frankly admit that this is not that's not something I think that I would not have advocated that that should be the case, and I really don't buy the argument that we have to strengthen the constituencies before we move to convention. The Constitution states clearly that there should be in a convention, and even if it was delayed by just a few months or so, as we resettled after the last general election, indeed, in fact, we should have had a convention. No, it is left to the elders of the party, the executive members of the party, those who have voted in, to see the dangers if we do not have a convention. And well, to our chairman and our uh, uh, public relation officer, sorry, our general secretary and our chairman have both hinted that they would like to see elections this year, but I would even go a bit further. Would like to see elections before mid-year take place. And so it is the burden now is on the executive members to recognize that if we do not have a convention, then we could be caught flat-footed. If we go past midterm and we don't have a convention, we haven't decided on the future leadership. Now, if Dr. Mitchell decides he's going to be seeking election, sure, by all means, that is his right. I mean, we have the greatest respect for our leader. Now, he did say, however, that it was clear. He hinted at it previously, and in the last election, it was he made it absolutely clear he wanted one for the road, and he didn't get that one for the road, and it is his choice if he has to make that decision whether he wants to come back or not. And if he wants to come back, he should be prepared to face a challenger. That is how the party, that will allow the party to grow and to go through the phases, and also to get its act together. And in terms of if there's a change of leadership, and even if the present leader remains in, there will be a period after that convention when the party has to resettle and start to reorganize, etc. And the earlier that is done, the better it is, because otherwise, as I said, we could be caught with a snap election, and that would not be healthy for NMP, the future of NMP. Neither would it be healthy for the country, because don't forget, we function and we want to make sure that we have a multi-party system, essentially here, a two-party system, and we want to make sure that both parties are in healthy states to vigorously compete against each other and bring forth the best for the country.
Reason that, and you touched on it, that is being given time to, or the party needs to be organized. You have been with the party since the early to mid 90s, so you have been through many cycles of elections and conventions, wins and defeats, and convention period coming up right after those occasions, those events. What is different now at the party, within the party, that would allow anyone to accept, which seems to be the situation, because no one is stepping forward and saying enough is enough, we're setting a date, we're the general secretary, we're the chairman of the party, we're the general secretary. What has changed within the party that would allow what has always seemed to be a well-oiled and organized machinery to be struggling to get its act together to call a convention? You've had conventions like more than, what, 24 times?
Yeah, well,
It's
quite a
nothing
few.
new.
Quite a few. I can't really count them at present. We are at the present time clearly the members of the executive, probably some of them are not thinking in the way that I just expressed, and recognizing the dangers if we continue to go without seeking to, having a convention and renewing and strategizing thereafter for the party. And for whatever reason, some might be shy in saying, look, because that's all it really requires for the majority of people in the executive, in the formal executive of the party, to say, we think it is time for a convention. The people are calling for it. We want to give a chance, perhaps, for new blood to be injected. And don't let us forget, Calestra, that there were some lessons to be learned from the last election. People, after a time, Dr. Mitchell, I have the greatest of praise for him and his stewardship. We talk about transformation. Dr. Mitchell transformed this country. Everybody talks about infrastructure and they talk about areas of electricity and water, etc. But you see what he did in the educational field? That was transformation at the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary level. As a matter of fact, at the tertiary level, some of the folk who got a chance to get education at the tertiary level, they're the ones who now are in the government and don't turn around as they say we're going to cut our tail. But that's all right. That's the nature of politics. Um, so yes, Dr. Mitchell has played a great part in the sight of the country and the stewardship of the country, but people in the last election had other thoughts. They were, of course, there were many reasons why we would have lost the last election, but one of the primary reasons is that people wanted a change and they do not want to go back. So I feel personally, if we went back to the polls with Dr. Mitchell as our leader, our chances would be less. And if we selected a person and a person who has a broad following, and we have people in the party who should come forward and contest. Well, one has come forward and others have hinted at it, who can come forward and contest. That we have not had, to be honest with you, Calistria, I've sat at most of the conventions, if not all, and I watch as, it was almost classic. You would hear nominations for a leader, and someone would call for Dr. Mitchell to be nominated. It would be seconded, and then someone would call for nominations to be closed. It was as simple as that. That worked well. And nobody had any problem. There's no question. But now we are in a different phase. People of our generation need to be looking the legacy that we leave. Look, Dave Cameron was Prime Minister of Britain of UK, and what's Dave Cameron doing now? Dave Cameron is Foreign Minister under a Hindu Prime Minister. Prime Minister. He's just this week in USA, but serious negotiations because of the two critical wars that we have going on around the world. He has seen how important it is for him to come back, and obviously he's supporting Rashid Risky, the new Minister. I might have got his pronunciation wrong. But he's supporting him,
Rishi Sunak.
and so Rishi Sunak, right? And so in similar vein, well, I'm not saying that our leader needs to come back and be in a position like that, but there's a place. His legacy will be strengthened if he were to not come back into the forefront of politics and either play a part from outside or just be there as a guide, and his experience will be needed. And then we looked among the other members of the party and see, and the delegates at the convention decide among those members who is the best candidate to come forward. We've had Mrs. Pear recently talking about that she would contest if there was a vacancy. But I hope she will change than that. I know of her work. I know of her work with especially with the youth back in the 2004 period. She did important and critical work. She's been a serious, she's now a senior member of the party who's worked hard with the public relations, etc.
And like Dr. Mitchell and so many others within the party, she's worked hard. She has delivered important changes in some cases. No one is perfect. We've never had perfect politicians. I don't think we ever will. But here she comes in saying, if there is a vacancy, it seems to me that her posturing is enabling what is being criticized as undemocratic processes within the NNP, and also practices that could jeopardize the future of the party. She seems to be enabling it. Unlike Peter David, for instance, and I'm not trying to defend or support Peter David here, but he has come, he's notified the party officially. I will put myself up because it has been widely recognized through polls, through the election results, through the sentiments of people in the party and very senior people within the party, that we need this change, that Dr. Mitchell, as great as he has been at the helm of the party and as Prime Minister of the country over these 2.5, 3 decades, we need this change to move forward. So he's done that. But she has not. She has an even longer history and more at stake and more connected to the NNP in terms of growing up. She grew up in that party. But there she is enabling something that, most of you guys are saying should not be happening. Can we take her seriously then? When she seems to be pandering to Dr. Mitchell.
Well, I don't know that she's pandering to Dr. Mitchell per se, but I personally hope that she would come forward and put herself out for election. I would love to see a battle. At one stage, it looked like Ms. Akima Paul was interested in the leadership, and if she was around, that would have been a great battle, and the party would have come out stronger for it. But we have and Mr. David, we have a person there with a lot of national appeal. He is loved by the people, has been for decades. So he is a good potential candidate to lead the party. He's sharp intellectually, and he has experience in foreign affairs and also in tourism. And more recently, before the government lost power, he was Minister of Agriculture. So he brings a wealth of experience, and as I said, he's loved. And one of the things I like about him is that you look at his career and you see that he's not gone out there and sought to make the multi-millions that you could, or millions for sure, that you can make by going in certain directions. He has largely work with amongst the poor people, representing the poor people, and I think that is admirable. But in addition to all of that, he also has contacts internationally. I heard recently our chairman said that Mr. David was the person who introduced him to the for Six Senses, who Six Senses, the big hotel that was just opened there in St. David's. So and that is an important aspect of that a potential leader has, if he's going to can bring contacts from outside, and obviously the contacts and funding and whatnot, because campaigns take a lot of funding. And Mr. Peter David, he has that capacity. So I think I also got to know him pretty well during COVID, and he's a team player, and I also like that about him. So he has many assets, and there are other people with the NNP who could come forward and who I work with, who I recognize, who are loved by the people. I worked with them during the last election. I won't mention their names because they haven't indicated that they were interested in coming forward. Not as experienced as Mr. David, etc. But again, you must be a person who is loved by the people, and who the people can rally around, basically. So NNP has talent there, and it's just for now for the executive members to push and make sure that we do the right thing, and the right thing is to have a convention, stop fiddling around and making excuses and saying we're going to have it next year. And that, no, I don't agree with that. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. Let's have a convention. If the party goes back under Dr. Mitchell, decide that it is, and Dr. Mitchell comes forward and it goes back under Dr. Mitchell, so be it. I don't think, as I said to you earlier, that it will be the healthiest thing for the party, and I think it will decrease our chances, because one of the things you're trying to do in an election is to capture the independent vote. And we lost a lot of the folk who might vote one election to NNP, next election NDC. With a new leader, we have a chance, a much greater chance of recapturing a whole section of that body. As it stands presently, if we went back with the same leadership, not so much, and therefore I feel our chances would not be as great at the next election. And I'm a strong Democrat. I believe in the process. And let me say, Dr. Mitchell has shown his love for democracy. After every election that he's lost, I've called him up and said, well, empathized with him, said, well, how are you organized to go? And already he was organized, and he left from office as the prime minister and allowed for smooth transitions. So he is a deep Democrat at work, at heart, sorry.
But
And the same thing must be brought to bear.
Dr. Brathwaite,
Yeah.
what's going on in the party now? Given where we are in the world, I don't think Dr. Mitchell had much of a choice but to facilitate a smooth transition of a new administration after any general election in the country where he is lost, with international observers and everything, and just the geopolitical situation in the world and the situation in the world. But when it comes to the NNP, he is not proving to be this bastion of democracy right now. He's holding up the convention of his party. He is creating now, and let's go to this topic that I wanted to raise with you, this thing now that he's calling leads and deputy leads. So he's bringing in these politicians, these former politicians that we had not heard from, some of them in decades, to be leads and deputy leads. The opinion of some people is that they don't even have any political currency anymore. He's creating the structure within the structure of the NNP that has worked so well, 3 clean sweeps at the poll, 20-something years in control of the government, although not consecutive. So he's not standing true to democracy within the party. And these leads and deputy leads, he's seeking, it appears that he is seeking to create his own machinery to ensure that he gets nominated, the nomination gets seconded, and somebody moves to that nomination cease, and somebody quickly moves to second that nomination be ceased, and he becomes a leader once again. It seems to be that. Isn't that dangerous for the party, creating a second delegate structure within the NNP at this time, which appears to be what's happening?
Well, to be quite honest, the question of leads, you don't really see that within the constitution of the party, as I remember it. And I am a strong advocate for full openness at the meetings. But you see, it isn't just about Dr. Mitchell. It is about what the elected members of the executive allow to happen. If the elected members, starting especially with the most senior members, get up and speak out and say, no, this is what the Constitution says, this is the way we should go, then it won't happen. And if they don't, they do it at the peril of the NNP at the end of the day. I guess I'm fortunate, and I'm a great friend of Dr. Mitchell's, but if he's on the wrong track, I tell him straight, no, I can't support this, right? And others have to be prepared to do that. Right? It's as simple as that, basically. And especially the very, very senior members, we heard the chairperson, we heard the general secretary. We need to hear other voices. We need to hear their voices even more in a more poignant manner.
Or they can just follow the Constitution. When I think of Dr. Mitchell now in this stage of his life, I think of someone who can be out there helping to create great opportunities for the country, using his great, his enormous amount of talent and education and experience to help lift the country higher, and to have the younger generation have the benefit of his experience and his connections out there, not in a catfight to remain as the leader of the party. I just think he can do so much more for the country if he is focused on what's available in the world for us and helping to consolidate for us out there. Because we're out of time, but I want to end the program by just talking, and we don't have a lot of time. I mean, we need a whole hour to talk about Dr. Mitchell's accomplishments, but we don't have that kind of time. Dr. Mitchell has done a lot. He can walk off the stage right now. He can walk off center stage right now without any regrets, not so?
Absolutely. Yes, he lost his last election when he least expected to. But Dr. Mitchell, especially the way he handled the country has had three major crises since independence. And one was obviously 83 period, and the other two were the ones that he was involved with, and that is after Ivan and Emily and here with COVID, both of which he handled in masterful ways. But like everything else now, we need to be looking for younger people to come up and to be able to develop that same body of skills, because one of the things the country is facing now is that we have thrown a set of folk to run the country who don't have that experience, and it is telling because you see a lot of ad hoc moves and which would never have occurred. It's clear that the thinking and the that goes into making decisions that occurred under the NNP government, that is not happening now as far as I can detect. And so, yes, Dr. Mitchell can walk away and feel proud, very proud, and I don't think he actually was done justice in the 50th anniversary celebrations here. Yes, his name was mentioned, and there was a picture of him acting, but quite often in the big public scenarios, there was an attempt to downplay the significant contribution he had to make. But so he's made a contribution. He still has a contribution to make, but he should be looking now to get some of the younger blood. And he's been very good at finding younger talent. Many of our ministers have come up through the ranks and have proven to be very talented. Look at the work.
But
Former minister
everywhere except at the level where you can be the prime minister of the country. Um, and even now he continues to resist anyone else taking his spot. And this one for the road seems to be what his end game is, and not necessarily the survival of the party or the future of the country. And sometimes you wonder, why is it
Well,
that way?
I have heard Dr. Mitchell on many occasions comment in years gone by on leaders when they were coming even after they had served for many many years, and said that he wished he hopes that when he reaches a similar stage, that he can walk away from it, and that you found yourself with leaders in neighboring countries who were barely able to go along with it, and actually the whole weight of taking back up the office actually probably resulted in the earlier demise. And I remember him commenting and saying that he hopes that that won't be the case, and indeed, in fact, that is what I hope he can sit back and really soak in his many achievements in this country and watch it progress further under a new leadership in NNP.
Well, Dr. Brathwaite, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the narrative. We have welcomed Dr. Mitchell in St. Mark. He has a beautiful little estate up there, not so little, but an estate up there. And of course, we continue to welcome him and hope that he can be comfortable and enjoy things up there and not, be too hassled at this time of his life. He deserves it. Thank you so much for joining me on the narrative, Dr. Bert
Thanks
Brathwaite.
for having me, Callistra.
All
Thanks for
right.
having me.
All right. This is the narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Farrier, speaking there with Dr. Bert Brathwaite, who is a senior member of the New National Party, taking a look at the troubles within the NNP, the current situation within the NNP, and what the party needs now to move forward, diagnosing what's going on, and some analysis on what's happening, what should be happening. More when we come back.